folks. I'm going to start. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. And today is, I'm super excited to be part of this incredible group of leaders that we have joining us, and all of you for joining online. And before I even start, I'm going to tell you I'm Mariela Dabbah, founder and CEO of the Reimagine movement, and I'm the hostess of this program. All right, so first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Kees, Roks, who's the gentleman with the blue shirt, and he's the head of Region Europe, Novartis Oncology. Kees studied medical microbiology, and he holds a degree in business administration from the University of Eindhoven in Netherlands. I'm probably killing that name. Since November 2018, he's the head of Novartis Region Europe in Novartis Oncology. And in this position, he's responsible for leading the Novartis Oncology business across Europe, including the highly innovative CAR T therapies. He joined Novartis as a sales representative in the Netherlands in 1985 and moved up through cross-functional assignments in marketing and sales. First, still in the Netherlands, but in 2002 in Germany as franchise head, and in Switzerland as head of marketing and sales for West and Central Europe. After this, he started his first GM role as pharma general manager and country president in Norway. In 2008, he moved to Japan as head of marketing and specialty business, followed by 3 years in Russia as the general manager for pharma. In 2014, he joined the oncology division, and his first role was as head of the Western European cluster. Prior to taking his current role, he was the head of Latin America and Canada, and that's where we met him, when he was the head of the LACAN region for oncology. And he became one of the strongest male champions the Reimagine movement can dream of. He's serving as a member of the EFPIA, which is the Patient Access Committee, and is member of the Assembly for the Mission on Cancer and the European Commission. Hi, Kees.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for this amazing introduction, and I'm also excited, with your call outs. So many people from so many different places in the world. So I'm just impressed and humbled. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to do the brief intro of Michael Sayak, who's the head of medical affairs, Region Europe on Novartis Oncology. And following the graduation in medicine at the Free University of Berlin, Michael pursued a career in general, cardiovascular, and surgical oncology, gaining an MD and an FRCS. He joined the pharmaceutical industry 24 years ago and has since been in clinical development, project leadership, and commercial and medical affairs roles at country, regional, and global levels. Throughout his clinical and industry career, Michael mainly covered specialty care areas like oncology and immunology. And he's also qualified as a pharmaceutical physician and as an MBA. His research interests and publications are in oncology and immunology, as well as in general aspects concerning medical and clinical affairs in the industry. So hello, Michael. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. And again, as Kees said, we are humbled by the audience diversity and reach. I think it's impressive. We hope we make it worth your time, I guess.
Oh, you will make everybody worth it. And Ash, whose full name is Ash Layan, if I pronounce that correctly, Ash, correctly.
You're there.
Van Detgen is the head of digital communications at Novartis Oncology in Europe. And she's a thinker, a writer, and an explorer of the unconventional. As a senior communicator and strategic advisor, she uses her deep expertise and her love of a good story to capture the hearts and minds of her diverse audiences and stakeholders. She's fascinated by digital storytelling and is currently experimenting with podcasting, in-house video production, and micro storytelling in the TikTok, Instagram era. And she holds degrees in literature and art history from the University of Massachusetts. And when an aggressive and rare cancer came into her family more than 10 years ago, she became an instant advocate. So she also changed her career plans and has never looked back. On her journey to summit her own career jungle gym, chasing her passion and honing her talent. She's always on the lookout for people with that special combination of potential and ambition to join her. So the climb to the top is more fun, but it's also less lonely. So welcome, Ash, to our conversation.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm really happy to have you. Let me start with the question of how has the quarantine been for each one of you personally? Who are you quarantined with, and how has it affected you? Briefly, if we can start and do Kees, Michael, and Ash.
Okay, so of course it was super impactful, but I'm blessed that I'm living in Switzerland. Here at least we could walk outside because I'm currently in my apartment in Liestal, which is a small village close to Basel, together with my wife. We don't have kids, so that's in situations like this, I think also listening to people who had to, homeschooling and then taking care of the kids while working, for me that was a little bit easier. Nevertheless, you saw that you had to convert your entire calendar to virtual, and on top of that, of course, we got a lot of COVID-related meetings. So the beginning was really super heavy to manage your career. And I always say it was still a time that I took control and let go. And to control for me means taking control of your calendar, not starting too early, have a lunch break, have breaks in between, and work not too late in the evening. Still acknowledging that the people who want to have this flexibility, of course, could spread their day over the entire day and the available hours to make the life for them as bearable as possible. For me, it was, as I said, very busy. It became more controllable when I controlled my agenda, and the let go piece is also very important. You cannot be everywhere every time. I had to start the first weeks at my dining table, which was not good. The good piece of that, by the way, was that my wife finally understood what my job was all about. She heard me talking, she heard my enthusiasm. She said, "Oh, okay, you were pretty engaged in that discussion, what was going on." But after a few weeks, I was banned to the room I'm now here, our small guest room. I have bought a desk, I have my monitor here now. Because I was intervening too much in her life, right? So she wanted to do what she could do instead of being silent because I was in meetings all day, have the radio on, play music. So now I'm here, and now of course I get the complaint that she doesn't know what I'm doing anymore. So from connection to disconnection. So that was a little bit of finding the balance together on how to live together in one apartment when I was living there, and deal with that as a couple and make it work.
I will come back to that question, to that point in a minute. Michael, do you want to tell us how this quarantine has been and who are you quarantined with?
So I'm not far away from Kees. I'm a few villages closer to Basel, and I'm with my wife, who also works full time. I also started at the dining table, but then I found myself rapidly banned into the spare bedroom, which is fine because she's also working full time, so we share the spare bedrooms in our flat. For me, quarantine as a professional was somewhat enlightening. I spent more time with people I wouldn't have had as deep and meaningful conversation in a non-virtual day. I'm also, as part of a non-professional, I'm a father of a grown-up son, and I miss my son who lives in London, who works and lives in London with his family, and that was difficult. And I miss my little nieces and nephews. That was very difficult. They grow up fast, and they are sort of my balance in life, my unbossed leadership journey, I always say to Kees, because my little niece tells me exactly what I have to do and what I don't have to do. And I miss that. I miss not seeing them. I mean, yes, I see them on WhatsApp, and it's great, but it's not the same as in face-to-face. So on a professional level, I think I've learned a lot, and virtual has helped me dramatically. On a private level, I still feel that face-to-face is a much better option, and I regret that. But like Kees, I've been in a blessed setting in Switzerland, and we are grateful for that. And my wife and I found out, I think it's the first time we were together for 4 months in a row since I emerged from medical school, which is, I would say yesterday, but it's more than 30 years ago. And that's a shock to the system, but we did extremely well. So that's good.
Absolutely.
So I enjoyed it, but I see many, many drawbacks also of it. And I hope that we will have a fresh start with some changed normality.
Yeah, and how about you, Ash?
So like my colleagues here, I'm also quarantining with just my partner, but I also have a very needy cat. And since I live an immigrant lifestyle here in Switzerland, I find myself utilizing those immigrant lifestyle tactics to connect with people. So I have a sister who is a single mom on the front line facing COVID right now. I have another sister who works in a restaurant who is on furlough and not getting paid. I have another sister, yes, there's lots of us, that is postpartum, went through her postpartum baby recovery after having a kid right when the quarantine started. So I have seen the other side of it very vividly through a screen. And while professionally I keep working and I have that feeling that, okay, I'm doing good, I'm keeping up, there's also that privilege that sits with me because I do have my job and that is my focus mostly. But you know, it's been a really big learning experience for me, seeing it through a screen, living it through a screen, and also living it day to day in my kitchen, working. And as a communicator, a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to start right away asking you questions from the chat, right? Because I don't want people to think we're ignoring them. So there is not going to be a rhyme or reason to this session. It's not that I have an agenda. You know how that works. The agenda is whatever people want to talk about. So Karina says it's difficult to continue to be visible when we work from home and new managers are joining. Any advice? So like, you know, some people are onboarding, but the onboarding is virtual and you have never met them and you're working from home. And so how do you remain visible with that situation?
That's a very good question, and Ash knows that we even had that discussion during one of the virtual coffees we are organizing now to continue to connect with people. And we had indeed during one of those coffee sessions people who joined during the crisis, some even at the other side of the world, joining from Costa Rica, and never been to the headquarters and seen their team. So what we discussed there is a few things, right? That is the formal setup with your manager and get the team together, and that's of course the managers and the P&O responsibility to really get integrated, to get onboarding and to have the sessions. But there are two other things which we concluded are very helpful. That is building a network, and during that call we already saw that people volunteered to help her in her onboarding and to build already a much wider network than her own team she was part of. So that's the other one. And then just joining events like that, like the virtual coffee, because that creates that opportunity, right? It's the chicken and the egg. Because she was joining those virtual interactions, which were very informal, just to hear how people are doing, to get input, how we're doing as a company, how we're doing as a leadership, get feedback, learn from them, and adjust while going. That allowed her to create a network and find already in that small setting people who could help her with her onboarding outside her team, as I said. So that are a few things to increase visibility, but also to mimic a real onboarding as much as possible, because in the office you would go for lunch together and meet other people. Now you need, and I hope that many companies give those opportunities for people to connect informally and have a little bit of a good time, but also an exchange, how people feel, how they're doing. So for us that worked, and you know, this is a live example from somebody who joined the European team from Costa Rica and is still there because of COVID.
Good. And Rihan from Cairo asks, it's around perception, his question. How do we change perception that if you're based in one country and you're expert in that country, you can go outside this country? And I think that's a very poignant question, because we could also extend it to this issue that you need to be mobile in order to get a promotion in a different country, which now has been debunked, right? So can you address that, Michael or Kees?
Yeah, I can start and Kees can supplement me. So I think we always kept an open mind. So for some things you need to be a specialist in a country or in a language, but of course leadership and many countries have a very similar footprint in our industry. So transferability within countries is a given. Now, of course, the question mobility, can you move to another country? We were always open-minded in Region Europe. We accept that to work well, associates need to be happy. To be happy, their families need to be happy. So we have the arrangements generally in place which suit the associate, which often involves commuting. And we will, of course, in the virtual age, I think we've seen it works very, very well. As Kate said, we can even have associates across many time zones working with us in the region, and hopefully we will retain that. We're looking at so-called distributed working models where if the role has the sufficient level of autonomy, that this role can be done from wherever the associate can place it. Now, of course, there is a snack to that, which is not within Novartis, but within society, within government, is that we have to pay salaries, and salaries require tax payments, and that will be something we will have to address with governments, all of us together, as associates and as citizens, to ask our governments also to be more understanding to how we pay our taxes and where we pay our taxes, because that's a big limiter sometimes for us to give employees, associates the freedom they really deserve to work from wherever they can, I think.
Thank you. I think that there's still an issue that we need to address, and Kees, you can address it in terms of the perception or anything else that you wanted to add to Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to do that because perception is about cultures, right? And I've seen that in my career. It's not COVID related. When I went to Japan, people said, "Oh, we feel so sorry for you that you need to start to lead that specialty business and those marketeers." And I said, "Why do you feel sorry for me?" And they said, "You know, we've never seen a talent coming from Japan." And of course, that is not true. So when I came there and got to know my team, there was a lot of talent. But it's because people from Japan don't easily speak up, especially not in native speaking American people, British people. We all talk fast. We don't have pause, where the culture in Japan is you wait for a pause before you speak. So the perception they created without knowing was they never have an opinion, they never have an idea because they don't speak up in the big meetings. But it's just a cultural conflict. Now we are exporting Japanese talent because what we did is we did reversed cross-functional training, cross-cultural training. Normally you train the expat, and I always did it when I went to another country. But what we started to do there is to train them on the culture of Europe, although they stayed in Japan, just to learn, what the different way of communicating is, and therefore could blend in. And we did trainings, you can raise your hand, you can be, if you like, if you feel you can be more assertive. And the same happened to me when I went to Russia, that people said, "Oh my God, what are you going to do there?" And that's just misperception about the country, about the culture in the country. It's all driven by propaganda. And there are amazing people there, but they were not valued. There was a wrong perception. And I can imagine that is for different cultures in the world, when there is no direct match between the culture of where the headquarters is, or for us the region, versus that culture in the country, that there's a lot of misperception about the people, the quality of the people. If you go to a country like I did a few times where I don't speak the language, in the beginning, the biggest trap you can walk in is the English need to be perfect, and that's your best people, and that's the most intelligent people. That's not true. It's absolutely not true. So you need a translator. You need to switch that button and have a different look at people, and really dig deep and understand the culture, but also that if they cannot express themselves in English, that doesn't mean they're not super talents. And there are a lot of those misperceptions. So for the people who experience that, try to do what we did in Japan as well. Try to understand the culture of where you would like to go, because you may be lucky that you have somebody who's super open and understand cultures, but maybe not. And then there is also a piece of self-responsibility that you can take that initiative as well.
Maybe also to add, I think in the virtual times, it should actually be easier because the conversations we have are much more straightforward. It should be easier to overcome that perception. At least that's what we saw in virtuality, is we focus on content, and that's easier for people to bring across. So I think virtuality may have helped here.
And
that's a good point.
Move on to the next question, which is really, I'm going to ask it, but I want to connect it with something I wanted to know as well. Mariela is saying, how would you envision talent management evolution, given the fact that with COVID, we proved to be productive, effective remotely? Will talent pool increase beyond geo frontiers, right? So that's kind of the question, and I want you to, when you answer it, and let's try to keep the answers very concise so that I can go through a lot of the questions that I have here. Also think about, how were you guys doing before COVID? Were you open to working remotely, or were you the kind that wanted to be in the office, wanted everybody to be in the office, and now you've learned something with this? So the question from Mariela in terms of how do you envision the talent evolution, talent management evolution, and mine about how was your style before. Go over. Let's start with Ash.
So I've talked a lot about this with my team. I sit in Basel, but have also counterparts in Italy and Milan, and so I would have to do the back and forth. And when I was onboarded, we were still in the default traditional working, and I would have to commute. Since COVID has happened, since we've gone virtual, my team has been more connected. We've had greater access. So there is an improvement there, I think. So since I had that experience where we've moved now to a virtual environment, I think that talent can have that opportunity to be more democratic, as you just mentioned, Kees, to have access to a greater talent pool. I'm going to turn it back over to Kees and Michael because they do a lot more hiring than I do. So give you the question.
Go for it, Kees.
No, I think Michael touched on it already. You know, we have those models to allow people to live somewhere else than where the technical job is, and that will only improve. Of course, not if you work in the laboratory, right, or in production, but if you have more a formal desk role, then I think in the future virtual teams will be the new standard, and people can work from other locations. That for sure. So I see an increase of those opportunities, and that will mean that the pool of talent will expand. That is the people where we in the past said, if you're not mobile, it will get difficult, right? And that will not happen anymore. Your question on how I was, I'm one of those who always encourage people to work from home when needed, if needed. To be honest, so I was not the manager who wanted to see his team all the time. That was not needed. But to be very honest, the only times I did it for myself was after the mid-year reviews and the year-end reviews, if I had to do a lot of writing to give people good feedback on paper, right? Then I worked from home, and all the rest I was either traveling or I was in the office. So I was not really implementing what I was encouraging my people to do, and that has changed. I'm sitting at home. I could have been sitting in the office because they're open again. So that, yeah.
And I think that's great to hear. And Michael, what do you have anything that you want to add to what was said?
I think just if you ask for the concise answer, yes, we will expand the talent pool. And like Kees, I mean, I traveled more than 200 days a year easily. But for my team, it's always clear they can work from wherever they are comfortable. Now I've also had my catharsis in a way that I can probably work better with my team not being in the office because I take more time for them. So for me, it was a bit of a catharsis moment, really, and I will probably in the future also work more from home or in a distributed way. Like us and like Kees, we have an office in Milano, so we have to still address that. But it's really been a catharsis moment from being myself, not the best role model, to learning that actually virtuality helps working with people. I was surprised. I didn't think it would, but it does.
And Amna says face-to-face interactions usually speed up the decision making, and recently with COVID, virtual interaction have led to lengthy internal decision making processes. Any advice how to keep up the momentum virtually?
I don't think we can confirm that so much. I think with many decisions, namely, look, talking in my own shop, it's we have constructed clinical trial protocols in 1/12 of the time we normally do virtually. So I don't think we can really say that virtuality takes more time to come to the end result. I think what we can say is that virtual reality takes more time out of your day initially because discussions become longer, but decision making does not become longer because I think we focus to the point, we are more respectful, I think, online, we listen to one another carefully, and we come to good decisions quicker. At least that's in my shop, the experience. I cannot confirm that we had delayed decisions, rather the opposite.
Okay, and Kees, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah, even stronger. Even in our oncology executive committee, I phrase it that it is my dream that the speed up of decision making during COVID will be the new standard. So the opposite, at least in my reality, is true. And I think there is also an increasing quality of the decision making because of what Michael said is, and if you look at how the meetings go, and we use Microsoft Teams, you know, people can raise their hands. So I feel that the introverts now, by raising the hand, having the time to think before they have to speak, are contributing much more than in that violent environment of extroverts. And there you're sitting, and the meeting is over before you have, you know, all your minds in a row, and you're ready to say something. So I think there is more diversity of input, and therefore the decisions are better, but not slower. At least that's not a practice. Like Michael said, I don't have that experience either. Sorry to hear that, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I would like to hear from you is there is this mixed, I don't know, mixed feeling about what's happening right now in these virtual meetings, whether they are an opportunity, like you were saying, for introverts to raise their hand and be heard, or whether it's an opportunity for a lot of people who have their camera off, if they're meeting on Zoom, to disappear behind the wall. Nobody even knows if they're really there, or they just have their picture on the screen. And, you know, it makes it even easier for introverts and for women who usually might not voice their opinions, or that their opinions might not be asked for, to disappear. So I want us to focus for a minute on what can people do to remain visible and to remain in their career tracks, in their ambitious career tracks during this time where a lot of that interaction, where we all have learned how to push our agendas forward, has been put on pause. So Ash, do you want to contribute anything to this particular point?
Yes, I think that the first and foremost thing I would recommend is working out loud. Find your ways and your channels that you can talk about what you're doing and you can control your message. So if you have internal social media channels, for example, we use Yammer, you should be, if you're not contributing in meetings, you should be making sure that you're sharing your good work in that space where you can control what is said, the images, all of it, and people can react and see what you're doing. That would be my first recommendation. And then, you know, participate in chat if you're not comfortable being on video, just so that people see your name and see you as there and active versus, you know, just passively listening. I think passively listening is the challenge we all have to confront in a virtual environment. There's so many distractions everywhere.
Yep.
So that would be my tip.
Kees? Anything you want to add?
I agree. And you know, switching on your camera, that's not making you more visible, right? Because it's about the participation, as Ash is referring to. But I also would like to make the bridge to pre-COVID, because also there I've very frequent talks with people who said, yeah, it took me a while before I reached out to talk about my career with you, about my aspiration to get some counseling. And I was asking why. Yeah, but you're so busy, right? And that's the same now. People are reluctant to reach out. And I would just invite everybody, you know, if you have something to discuss and it's meaningful and it can help you with your career, with your next step, or getting better in the current job, nobody is too busy to really spend time with people and to really have those meaningful discussions. So ask for that time. Don't be so humble that you say, yeah, but maybe not. Just, you know, be the manager of your own career and speak up. Make sure you have those meaningful contributions, but also that you get your airtime with the people where it matters, your network who can help you with progressing your career. You know, nobody's too busy to listen to you and to talk with you.
Good. And we have Ciaran asking, do you have any hints or tips for making virtual meetings highly efficient without wasting time? What can be done to ensure 80% of meetings aren't wasted? Michael, do you have any experience on this?
It's like a face-to-face meeting, make sure that there's a subject and an agenda which is worth discussing. I mean, there's sometimes meetings for updates are pretty useless. So then unless the update can be made quicker verbally than in writing. So meetings should focus around decision making. They should be then managed well by whoever has called the meeting. And participants should respect each other. And again, coming back to what I said earlier, and I think what Kees and Ash said as well, I mean, meetings become so much easier to manage in the virtual space because there's the respect and there's I think allowance for all kinds of introverts, extroverts, all kinds of behaviors are getting leveled by the virtual technology. So for me, actually, most meetings in the virtual space were more pleasant and much more successful than they were in the face-to-face world. And that's notwithstanding that we will have some face-to-face meetings, specifically, I think, with external people we haven't seen before. I think that's still a real point. But internally, I think when we want to discuss something of substance, I think probably virtual technology will have preference over face-to-face.
I would like to add that, and Ash, I see that you want to say something. I just want to.
I do.
Yes, I'll in a sec. I'll pass it on. I wanted to add that one of the things that's been working that we've been hearing with companies that have had success in this space is to limit the number of meetings you call for. What happens is that right now, because 100% of the workforce, including all of the leaders who used to not be available for meetings because they were traveling, right? They're all at home, and whatever issues they want to discuss, they call for a meeting. So a lot of people's calendars have become very overwhelmed by all of these extra meetings they never used to have. So try to synchronize with your colleagues and try to see if you could call one meeting for several topics, and instead of calling for 3 meetings for 3 different colleagues that need to reach out to the same group of people, right? And think 3 times before you call a meeting. If you really need a meeting, or if this could be solved with a volley of emails or with a volley of WhatsApp communications, and that's it, and then there's no meeting and people respond whenever they want. So go ahead, Ash.
I would say prepare for all of your virtual meetings. It takes a little bit more effort to do it, but a well-prepared meeting where you're not relying on, oh, will I remember this, or oh, can I have this person weigh in on this, will make all of the difference in the world. That, and think through, you know, the tools that you're using to make sure that you have the best technology to achieve the results and the outcomes that you want. And last tip would be limit the amount of people in your meetings.
Right?
Only the essentials. Only the essentials.
Go ahead, Mike.
And to come back on what I think you're absolutely right. I think there was an overwhelming amount of meetings, and I think it's important, and also as a manager of your team, to highlight that these meetings are optional. We offered a lot in the beginning to not lose contact because we were afraid. I mean, I was very afraid when we switched from within 1 week we couldn't go to Italy anymore. And we switched. We had the whole team meeting of 150 people. We switched virtually. I was very afraid what would happen. So yes, in a sort of knee-jerk reflex, we scheduled a lot of meetings, but we made sure that in every invite, this meeting is optional. It's non-mandatory. You can dial in if you want to see us, if you want to talk. If, like you are afraid of losing touch, here's your opportunity. We will not discuss anything. We will just have a coffee together. We will listen to how your family does in the COVID times. That's it. You want to do it? That's fine. You don't want to do it? It's equally okay. But we have seen that too.
And I want to focus a little bit on the conversation's topic of today, which is reimagining your career after pandemic. And I want to touch base on what do you fear might happen as a result of the current situation, with a focus on female talent, career aspirations, and career growth. Let's start with Kees. And so I want to hear, what are the fears and what are the silver linings? Why don't we combine those two questions?
Okay, I only have one fear, and that is that we go back to the old default. I think there is so much learning on how to connect, how to work virtually, and that's the silver lining and the opportunity that creates for talent. You know, we already touched on the talent which is not mobile and now has the opportunity to join a team virtually, which was possible, as Michael referred to, the commuter model we have for Region Europe, but still in a lot of teams, the hiring manager would say, oh, I prefer to have you here. So mobility was a big thing. So my biggest fear is that we go back to that situation, that people forget what we learned during COVID. And I will be close to everybody to make sure that doesn't happen. And then the silver lining is we have learned so much about virtual meetings that we're much more flexible in where we do our work. That is for all of us. Am I in the office? Am I traveling? Or am I at home? And that is for talent. You know, you can join a team which is not in your country, but you can stay with your family. You don't have to relocate to another country if you wish not to do so.
And can I add that in your case particularly, one of the silver linings is that you, as a leader who used to be in the office for everything or traveling, have now learned that you can do remotely, and that sets an example, and you become a role model for everybody else in the organization, right? Because when you set policies, but the leaders don't apply their policies to themselves, others think, okay, if they don't do it, I can't do it because then I'll be penalized somehow, right? So I think that that's a very strong silver lining, not just that you're in your case, but across the board. We see it with all of the organizations. Michael, what do you fear, and what's your silver lining?
Yeah, my fear is the same as Kees, that if we revert back, my silver lining is that I believe and that actually women are perhaps much better suited to the negotiation style brought in by virtual meetings. So I see if we continue the way we are, I have great hopes that we will improve even on our current numbers of female leaders in the team, because I think this will not just the infrastructure is better, as Kees refers to, but also I think the leadership style conveyed through virtuality, the negotiation talent of many of my female colleagues is superior to mine, and I think it will allow for great female careers. I mean, and you mentioned this role model. Kees is my leader, and I see him as a role model. But of course, I will always see a differentiated view that if Kees goes to the office, it doesn't mean I go to the office, and vice versa. I have that differentiated view, so I don't expect that so much. But I think what is good of us staying home is that In the past, then there was sort of a few people around us in the office in a meeting room from where the virtual meeting happened. And that made it more difficult for the isolated people dialing in. And I will not do that anymore. From an infrastructure perspective, it's either virtual or it's face-to-face. We don't do the halfway houses anymore because the halfway houses disadvantage those people going virtual. And that's certainly my learning. And it's nothing to do with wanting to be a role model. I think everybody is wise enough to take whatever they want from a person. But this halfway house wasn't great. And I think that we can stop easily by staying home and having the important meeting virtually going forward.
What do you fear, and what's your silver lining?
My biggest fear is watching the burden of mental overload strike all of the ladies around me. With COVID, I have seen and had calls where children are everywhere and family members are walking in and out, and the women feel this burden on them physically, and you can see it across their faces. And it hurts me when I see this because, you know, they shouldn't feel that burden so much. And it's that plus having to remember to make sure that their kids go to school and get their homework done or connect to their Zoom calls, to remember to do the shopping, to, you know, make that appointment to see the physician, whatever it is. All of that is swirling around in their head right now, and they're trying to balance a career at the same time. And so I see that mental load and that burden coming more and more to the surface, and it frightens me because I know that there's going to come a breaking point. And what do we do to help those women or anyone who are at that breaking point and they're not saying it? So that's what I fear. I fear losing those talented, inspirational people around me. My silver lining on the flip side of that is I'm currently sitting with the three of you and the rest of the rest of the team out there all over the world. And this is brilliant. And I have a glimpse into Kees's spare room and Michael's spare room, and you're in my kitchen. And Mariela, we're at your house there with the sailboat. This is wonderful. This is a private glimpse into a new world that's so authentic, and I love it. I hope it never changes.
It has strengthened the bonds between people and leveled the playing field for a lot of people. Alejandro is clarifying that fathers are also facing that kind of situation, Ash, and thank you, Alejandro, for bringing that up. And I'm going to combine two questions that I have regarding best practices that Sandra brought up. What good practices you have seen about supporting working parents during the pandemic, with a long comment from Cortland that says, you feel that this pandemic has encouraged more family involvement from both parents to be involved rather than the typical way that women have carried at stay-at-home parent, or both parents and employee, right? So has this balanced that act? And do you see this as something that will become more permanent all over the world, with companies seeing the future benefit of having our children have both parents more involved at home, even though it might make them seem less productive? Will companies see the benefits? So do you see this continuing as this benefit of both parents working and being involved with the parents, with the children? And do you think this will continue and companies will appreciate this or not?
I believe so. Hoping that all companies will continue to be as flexible as we are today, and I can only speak for Novartis and what I read in the news, but that is the tech companies, right? Like Google, and they are already allowing the people to work from home whenever they like, and we're going to implement that in Novartis as well for everybody where that's possible. And then I believe it's also your own responsibility to distribute that work and to distribute your time. We have given that flexibility, and I don't see any reason to take that away again, because we were hyper productive, right? Because we had to deal with COVID meetings and all the formal meetings. Now, let's hope that the COVID meetings will not be lasting, right? So that will go away. So that should give even additional room for flexibility for parents to take care of their life with the kids equally together and in full flexibility. I just can express the hope that also companies in their requirements to people. I'm not going back to the default. You know, my fear is not only the behavior of people, but that companies go back. For sure, I can guarantee that Novartis is not doing that, because we are about to announce how flexible we are. But yeah, I cannot speak for other companies, right? It's just a hope that I have, and then I see with less COVID-related meetings going forward. Let's pray there will not be a big second wave. That flexibility should be there. Absolutely.
Okay, and I mean, even if companies don't believe it, there was a good paper in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about that the companies who have protected their employees, who have made sure that they could stay at home, work well from home, have fared much, much better financially in the crisis. So investors will also push companies in the future to do that. But also, I think as a person, as a manager, I think we have the responsibility, and Ash is completely right, and we should have said this. I mean, many parents really had problems with virtuality because, of course, schools were closed. Now, hopefully that's going a bit better going forward. But what I tried with my team is also that they bring the kids on the screen, and it makes them proud, and the kids become, it doesn't become a burden anymore, it becomes the pride. And I mean, as I said, I wish I would have had my little niece here. She would have very well led meetings and explained to people what the thing is. And I've got to know all the children of my team face to face, and it's good, it's great, and we should honor that. And yes, it may make the meeting 5 minutes longer, so what? I think we give that parent a moment of pride and not a moment of worry. So I think it's also up to us as individuals to allow for that. It's normal. We want children, many. So.
And I appreciate your candidness. Alison says, for the first time, I feel equal, but the biggest fear is that if we return to normal, I will feel like we go backwards again. The understanding that is being shown now has been inspirational and refreshing. I hope as a working mom with aspirations for myself that this continues and I can continue to role model for my 2 young girls about what women can achieve in the business world. Thank you, Alison. And I want to ask, what are some of the most relevant steps women can take right now to make sure they don't deviate from their career trajectory, to make sure they can keep up that career ambition that they had coming into COVID? So, Kees, you have the floor.
Be clear about your aspiration, be vocal about it, and speak up. As I said earlier, don't think your manager or whoever is important for that is too busy to listen to you, to have that discussion with you. So you need to be very clear. If people don't know what you want, they cannot help you to get there. So make sure they know what you want, all the relevant people around you. And then make sure that you stay in touch and show yourself, as Ash said much earlier in the call, right? Engage, show yourself, show your quality, and then it will happen. I'm 100% convinced.
Yeah, for me, just to add, I think also look forward. What will the new normal, the fresh start really require? I mean, how can you make yourself really fitting the new environment? And I'm of the firm belief from a soft skills side, many women can outshine men in the future because of their different soft skill base. And then look what are the hard skills required in the future in this fresh start, and try maybe to adapt your career path, adapt your learning path to what will be the new future in 5 to 10 years time. We will have an acceleration of what has happened before, for sure, and make that step with the time.
Mine is going to come from an Instagram quote that I saw, and it is really about giving yourself space and balance. You don't know what is going to shape you. Diamonds are shaped by high pressure situations. Great bread is shaped by letting it rest. So truly embrace whatever you need right now to be your best self so that you can prepare yourself for the future, whatever it is.
Fabulous. I like that. And we have a message from Lily.
Instagram wisdom.
we know why she's in communications, right? We have a message from Lily who says, please tell the group how inspiring and reassuring it is to have men at their level supporting this movement, and to Ash, that I can sit and listen to her for hours, given the gift she has with words, and for her commitment to role model in a woman in power that is open to bringing in others with her is commendable. So sorry to be so long-winded, but I'm moved by them. Way to go, Novartis. That's the message. So then I have a message from Anke for Michael. Michael has let it be widely known that he's an introvert by nature. How does he make sure he's not under-communicating in the current situation? Does he have any advice?
Well, for me, actually, it turned out to be that this situation was better for communicating than probably the team, and Kees will be witness of it, where I sometimes wait my turn. I'm like the Japanese waiting for the break. Now I don't have to wait for the break. So here now, just time is an issue. I try to see as many people virtually as possible, as the day as ours. But for me, it's been easy as an introvert to communicate virtually. So I can only say it's been okay. I've found it easier than in the live setting, also to contribute to big meetings and to big meetings at global level. But it's a fair question, Anke. So for me, virtuality has probably helped me to come out of my shell rather than to go back into it. So
yes, I would say. And I have a couple of questions from Marie, who asks, from your expertise working in pharma, do you think we will only be able to get back to our work and lives once the vaccine becomes available? Is that your opinion? What is the expectation in terms of when is this going to be over?
So there's a good saying in epidemiology, is when you've seen one pandemic, you've seen one pandemic. So nobody has seen the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. There's no expert, neither Anthony Fauci in the US nor anybody else. There's no expert, so we have no clue. And of course, it has very little to do with the virus and a lot to do with how we as people react to the virus, which is how we as individuals and our politicians react to the virus. So we don't know. I think quite realistically, given that the virus has been relatively harmless, and that's notwithstanding that each personal affection was a severe affection and a personal loss, that we will go back to a more reasonable environment, where we don't have to wear a mask, where we don't have to behave in very strange ways, regardless of whether there will be a vaccine or not. And whether there is a vaccine is, of course, still a big question mark, because it's a little bit like the HIV virus. It works in hand with our immune system. So stimulating the immune system with a vaccine may not be what leads to success. So there may be other ways, and we are developing them with others which are much more successful. So we'll see. There's no expertise, but it depends on us and not just on the virus, or probably mainly on us rather than the virus.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you take the people lens to look at this, then it's also an individual decision.
We lost you.
Themselves.
Okay. Just say that again.
So that it's also a people's choice, and it's an individual choice to be, because you need to be comfortable to go back to normal, and then we need to decide what back to normal is. That's why I use the hashtag fresh start, because I think we should not go back to what was normal. I think also what we discussed today, the opportunities for talents, right? That is not going back to normal, but in the day-to-day life, it's also about how comfortable are people to behave like they behaved before. And we need to give everybody that space, I believe. We cannot force the community. Now there is a vaccine, now the threat is gone. Now everybody, feel comfortable to be in a room with many people. That will last for longer, I'm afraid. But that's also a personal choice, but also comfort level.
I agree with you. And I'm just going to acknowledge that we have a ton of questions that I have not gotten to. And for that, I apologize. But we always want to keep these sessions at an hour, even though we could have continued talking to you for at least half an hour more, because people's agendas are very busy. And it's always good to leave people wanting more than saying, okay, I want to disconnect, I can't take it anymore. So I apologize to all of you who've asked really great questions, but I've been trying to keep a flow and contribute to the topic that we set for today. So we're at the hour. I want to thank all of you for participating, all of you who joined us online and stayed and asked these incredible questions. We have a lot of comments saying from people who work at Novartis saying that they're very proud of having such inspirational leaders. And I agree with that, so I want to share that with you. So I give you like 30 seconds each to say goodbye. Ash?
Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you haven't already, let's connect on LinkedIn or any of the socials, because this is our community, and let's support and lift each other anytime.
So same invitation, LinkedIn, Twitter, but for the Novartis people, also Yammer. We can do much, much more if we stay connected. And thank you for the feedback. We only can be great leaders with great teams. So thank you for all your contribution, not only in the COVID time, but all the time. Thank you.
Good. Michael?
Nothing to add other than a big thank you to the audience. I mean, as Kees said, you are a leader because you have people in your team. You don't have people in your team, you are nothing. So it's quite clear. So thanks a lot, and yes, reach out. I'm not as good as Ash on various channels, so for me it has to be LinkedIn.
I'll help
I
you,
think
Michael.
that's what I'm on, and WhatsApp and the traditional email. I'm too old-fashioned, I think. I'll have to learn.
All right, so it's
by Mariela and her contact forums.
It's okay. We will send whatever social you feel comfortable with. I thank all of you, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.